Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Run the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Wednesday evening. Welcome to the show. We got a good show for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about the polar vortex, specifically Donald Trump's reaction to it. So that is both sad and fun at the same time. At least it keeps you, I mean, if you laugh, at least it keeps you from crying. So that's basically what's going on there. We'll talk about that. We also have an update on the Foxconn deal. What's going on there? Is it what it was promised? Short answer, no, but you'll love the details. Then, of course, we have staffers basically that have just given up, telling Trump that he's wrong about things. This comes after Dan Coates, who is the National Intelligence Director, contradicted Trump on Iran. So that's fun, slash somewhat dangerous. Then we're going to go to going after, or I wouldn't say going after, but actually discussing the record of Kamala Harris. So I got a couple of stories on that. We'll talk about how she actually really feels about healthcare. That's interesting. And then I'm going to address the truancy video that has gone viral. That's great. And then finally, we'll switch topics for the last story for a great interaction that happened at Davos. So you're going to love that story. I think that's my favorite story of the day, the Davos story. So great. Anyway, so that's kind of the breakdown that we have today. Before I get started, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. That helps out and that helps the show. Please subscribe, of course. We are now on our way to 125,000. So I am, trying to set goals, small goals, but goals. 125,000 subscribers. So let's try to get there as well. And not only that, but members. So let me see how many members we have. See if there are any new ones. And I think later on I'll have to work on seeing about some people not getting their member badges. I don't know how that works or why they have not done that. But I'm going to see what kind of answers I can find so that everybody does get their member badges. Because you know what? That member badge, kind of cool. It's kind of like that. So, yeah. Anyway, so let's see about memberships today before I dive into that story. Channel members, let's see, and we're at 12 members, so that's great. No change from yesterday. And again, I will look into the memberships here. So I'll address the person who's asking about memberships, but I don't see his name here. So maybe like tweet me or DM me something if you're on Twitter, and we'll talk about it. We'll see what's going on here to resolve that. But anyway, let's dive into the story. So we've got plenty of show. So let's go. And yes, it is separate from TYT memberships. It has nothing to do with them. So, okay. Let's start out with fun. So right now, the Midwest is facing some of the coldest temperatures on record. Now, it's thanks to a phenomenon known as the polar vortex. Now, I'm located here in Michigan, so in this state, we are facing wind chills that are up to about negative 50 degrees. So it's really, really cold. And there are places around 30 degrees or negative 30 degrees. Chicago is having dangerous conditions where people can get frostbite, even if they've been outside for only a couple of minutes. So it's really, really bad, right? Now, whenever these kinds of strange weather events happen, there's always those people who come out and decide that it's a great time to claim that there's no such thing as global warming. Because obviously, look how cold it is outside. There is no global warming. How can it be global warming if I'm freezing, if I'm cold. Lovely, right? Now, look, we've had these people for quite some time, right? Thankfully, they're a very vocal minority. Now, unfortunately, they are backed up by giant billionaires, oil barons and coal barons and things like that. But nonetheless, usually it's just a small subset. Most people know better. However, this time, it's actually the President of the United States saying that. Now, on Monday, Donald Trump had tweeted, quote, "In the beautiful Midwest, wind chill temperatures are reaching minus 60 degrees, the coldest ever recorded." I think that's the coldest in the last 25 years. But maybe it is ever recorded, so you might be right about that one. He said, "In coming days, expected to get even colder. People can't last outside, even for minutes. What the hell is going on with global warming?" Yes, that's a real tweet. It's supposed to be warming. God, he's got an iPhone. Why can't he use the spell check? And he says, "Please come back fast. We need you. Come back, global warming." Well, good news, Trump. Global warming is already here. And I'm going to explain later how global warming, climate change, has actually made this worse. Now, the response, of course, from social media, and this is what I love here, ranged from helpful, right? Like, oh, maybe you should, here's how to get yourself educated, right? To amazed that someone could be so incredibly dumb. So let me read off some of my favorite tweets here. Robert Berry, trying to be helpful, he says, "Hey, Donald Trump, read a science book." All right. Kenna Brown says, "Time to stop confusing weather events with climate change." That would be helpful. Muzzle, a little confused. He's like, "Wait, once again, I thought this was the parody account." Oh, I love that. Just Blue says, "The U.S. president should know the difference between weather and climate." Well, I agree. And G says, I can't believe you just publicly say these things online." Now, there's more. Angie says, "My sixth grader could explain the science of global warming to you, but I'm afraid he'd use big words you wouldn't understand." So now they start to get a little bit more savage, with Andy Cohen saying, "You tweet so much dumb crap that it's hard for us to keep track. Can you slow down a little?" And Mark Holmcomb says, "Oh, you sad senile windbag, you." Now, those are some fun tweets, but one of the best actually came from a member of the Trump government itself. So that's the National Oceanic Administration, right? Or NOAA. And now that's Atmospheric Administration, by the way. They tweeted out, simply, "Winter storms don't prove that global warming isn't happening." Now, why do I love that? Well, because it's a member of the Trump government, and I love the little graphic they added onto it. Can we take a look at that? Oh, that's awesome. That is an actual graphic tweeted out by NOAA. Oh, that's great. That's something that you would show a child. Which I guess in this case, accurate. Now look, will that help? No, of course not. Because Donald Trump, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about facts or logic or science. No, and he has no intellectual curiosity whatsoever. He is an extremely ignorant person. He's actually proud of that ignorance. And the truth is, the planet is getting warmer. I mean, look, when they looked at the scientists did, when they looked at the predicted daily mean temperatures globally over the last a few days, it shows that the world is warmer than average, right? Now, Australia right now is experiencing a record hot summer, and just last week's temperatures were seen hovering above 115 degrees Fahrenheit. That's really, really hot. Now, of course, again, there's weather and climate, right? Weather is short term. Climate is long term, especially when it comes to trends. Now, planetary warming, you're going to be shocked to find out that it doesn't just create hotter temperatures. According to extensive research, warming or a warming world creates more evaporation and moisture in the atmosphere because most of our planet is water. Now, that actually, more moisture actually ends up creating stronger storms. And actually also, when it's winter, now global warming does not mean winter goes away, right? What it does mean is that during the winter months, there will be stronger storms. So, and especially stronger snowstorms. Not only that, but a warmer climate also leads to more polar vortexes making it into the United States. So the very thing that these people cite as proof that there is no climate change, ironically, is an effect of climate change. In fact, scientists explain that the polar vortex, what that is, it's a freezing mass of cold air. Now, normally it sits above the North Pole, and it's usually trapped there by westerly winds from something called the polar jet stream. Now, those westerly winds, they kind of keep that in place. However, when excess heat from the rapidly warming Arctic hits the stratosphere, it splits those winds, right? It splits the winds that hold the polar vortex in place over the Arctic, which means that vortex can start to move. And where does it go? It goes south. It goes south into Canada, Russia, or the United States. So, oops. That's what happens according to science. And it is all thanks to disruption of the climate, thanks to climate change. But, of course, as far as Trump is concerned, well, he assures us that he is a very stable genius, and that he knows more than these overpaid scientists that get lots more in grant money than, say, the executives of Koch Industries and ExxonMobil. Or, Murray Energy, which, by the way, used to employ EPA Director Andrew Wheeler, as a lobbyist. Weird. No, every day this idiot is in office is a day that we lose that we could do something to mitigate what is to come. And so that is even worse climate change. We already have climate change baked into the cake. We already have massive changes coming. We have 12 years to avoid even worse changes that could be civilization ending. So we got to do something about it. And first, we need people in office that are actually smart, that actually understand science. And so we got to get them out, and we've got to get a Green New Deal. We've got to get the politicians in who actually believe in doing something transformative to save the climate. So, all right. That's fun. So let's go to a story along the same vein here. And we'll talk about how hard it is for Trump to convince Trump that he's wrong. All right. So President Trump just doesn't like to admit that he's wrong. Now, that's not just according to me. I mean, it's fairly obvious when you look at some of the stuff he tweets and look at the stuff that he says, even about the polar vortex or about climate change in general, right? But it extends to a lot more. Now, according to a NBC News national security reporter named Ken Delanian, his aides have found it so difficult to correct the president when he is wrong that they've basically just given up. According to Delanian, these officials say, quote, "It's extremely difficult to convince Trump he is wrong about something, no matter how much evidence they can put in front of him." So, look, us progressives, right? So we have this thing where we think that, no, you don't understand. We have data, we have evidence, we have facts on our side. If we just show people facts, then they'll have to admit, oh, you know what? I think you're right about that. Maybe I will change my mind, or, I will look at this policy in a new way and maybe consider it, right? Now, everybody who's ever gotten into an argument with, say, a right-winger or a Trump supporter knows that that's not true. Knows that no matter what you do, no matter what evidence you put in front of people, you will not win. They will not admit it. They will sidestep it. They will deflect, and they will just not agree. No, those aren't facts. That's fake news. Literally not true. But it is true. It's true. There's evidence right here. I've got papers. Well, you know what? Those scientists, they're fake news. It's not true. So what do you do when you have a president that doesn't believe in facts? Apparently, you just go, you throw up your hands and say, I don't know, man. I tried. Now, of course, this is particular stories in relation to Dan Coats. Now, Dan Coats is the National Intelligence Director for the United States, and he was talking about Iran. Now, Donald Trump, throughout his career, has made a lot of wild claims about Iran, normally followed by him live tweeting it about, like from a Fox News segment, right? Because that's normally where he gets his information, right? Information. Now, he said that Russia was continuing to try to interfere. I'm sorry. Dan Coats was saying that he tried to interfere in American elections. ISIS has not been defeated, and that North Korea was not moving to dismantle its nuclear weapons. And not only that, but as I said before, he would contradict the administration on Iran as well. Because so far, Iran has been continuing to follow the deal, despite the fact that the United States has actually pulled out of the Iran deal. But the fact that there are so many other countries that have still signed on and are still committed, that has given Iran enough, basically, it's basically given Iran the ability, or made them decide that it is worth staying in the Iran deal. So, but now, of course, after Trump was contradicted on all these different things, you had him saying that they were, quote, extremely passive and naive when it comes to the danger of Iran, and says they are wrong. Now, again, this is the National Intelligence Director of the United States. He's in charge of intelligence. That is something that apparently the president does not have. Apparently, according to Trump, he knows more about Iran than anybody. Nobody else could know about Iran as much as I do. I know everything about Iran, more than any one of you. Really? Okay. How does he know? How does he know that the intelligence is wrong? Does he have his own secret investigators that he sent to Iran? I wonder if they're the same ones who went out looking for Obama's birth certificate. Come on, man. He's such a dumb person. And I think he knows he's dumb. But he's not interested because in actually admitting the truth, because he's got an ego that is basically says that you cannot admit that you were wrong whatsoever. And maybe that works in some sort of deal making where you stick to your position no matter what. But it doesn't work when you're the president of the United States. It doesn't work anywhere else. And it might not even work in business if you're somebody who's just irrational and won't agree to actual facts. And with the president of the United States being in that position, well, look, the decisions that he can make, and this is where it comes dangerous, could have disastrous impacts. Like, for example, war with Iran, or war with Venezuela, or whatever. Implement, or like insert any disastrous policy that he could implement in, based on not factual information, and it's just not a good thing. So we got to get this guy out. For the good of the country, he cannot win another election. Okay. One more here. And that's Foxconn. All right. So President Trump and former Republican governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, spent a lot of time talking about the amazing Foxconn deal that was supposed to bring in thousands of good-paying blue-collar jobs. So now we have a bit of an update on that supposed great, amazing deal. Now, first, let me give you some background deal on this, or information on this deal. Basically, Foxconn received about $4 billion in taxpayer subsidies and incentives in order to build a plant that would employ around 13,000 people. Now, that comes out to about $22 million in taxpayer subsidies per job. But don't worry, they're supposed to be really good paying jobs, blue collar jobs, so that anybody can go in there. People who've lost out in the manufacturing sector can go and get these jobs at Foxconn. Now, look, I think that's a terrible deal. $22 million per job? You're not getting the return on investment. Why do you think Foxconn was more than happy to try to make that deal? But wait a minute. It turns out that deal is actually worse because the company is not even going to do those jobs. In fact, Reuters has reported that the company is now saying that instead of hiring 13,000 people, most of them blue-collar workers, they intend to hire mostly engineers and researchers rather than the manufacturing workforce that it was promised. In an exclusive interview with Reuters, Louis Wu, a special assistant to Foxconn chairman Terry Gao, said the company is completely walking back its plan to build a $10 billion factory in Wisconsin. He said, "In Wisconsin, we're not building a factory. You can't use a factory to view our Wisconsin investment." That's pretty clear. We are not building a factory. So if you want to spin that as fake news, then you'll have to ignore the quotes from Louis Wu, right, who's the assistant to the chairman, Terry Gao. So you're just going to have to, ignore all the official, everything that they've said about this as of late, if you want to call this fake news, which it's not. It's not fake news. They straight up lied. They got taxpayer money. They're still going to get the $4 billion, but they're not going to create great jobs. Oops. I guess our brilliant leader, Donald Trump, and actually I think the fault really lies with Scott Walker, screwed up. And they screwed over the taxpayer. Now, as Reuters notes, Foxconn initially said it expected to employ about 5,200 people by the end of 2020, with the rest coming at some point. However, a company source said that figure now looks likely to be closer to 1,000 workers. 1,000 workers. That's it. Wu in the interview said about 3/4 of Foxconn's eventual jobs will be in R&D and design, what he described as knowledge positions rather than blue-collar manufacturing jobs. Now, I'm not against that. I'm in favor of knowledge positions. And these positions are likely to be high-paying, pretty good jobs for people with college degrees. Yeah, that's great. But look at the cost. $4 billion in taxpayer subsidies and incentives for 1,000 jobs. That's it. Where's the other 12,000 jobs? They're just gone. They're just gone. Of course, then again, look, this shouldn't be a shock, right? The fact that the people that was intended to help by doing this deal, the average blue-collar worker will not be helped. Again, you shouldn't be surprised. We've been warning about this the whole time. We told you it was a bad deal. This was a terrible deal. And in fact, progressives have argued that this whole thing is an absolute fraud. Now, I'm just super sad that this deal obviously is so bad and that, look, Wisconsinites, they fell for it. Scott Walker obviously agreed to it. I don't know what he gets out of it. Maybe he gets something. Maybe he gets money. I don't know. But all I know is that the people that it was intended to help end up having to pay. That's what happens when you try to give out these sweetheart deals to big corporations. They always go back to no word. Okay, I'm going to take a break. We'll come back here. We got more show for you guys today. So stick around. Leave your super chats. I will read them. Join, become a member, and we'll be right back. Around the Nation. welcome back to the show, Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. Okay, so new member, want to give a shout out to Good Times. Well, thank you. I'm having good times now that I'm getting so many members. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. We're up to 13 members. Wow, you guys are great. So that's awesome. All right, now let's move forward here. I don't see any super chats, so again, let's move forward here. Let's talk about Kamala Harris. So here we go. All the Kamala Harris people are going to get probably a little upset, but I think it's really important that we look at, their records. And that's basically what I'm doing. I'm trying to be fair, okay, as fair as I can. Okay. So less than a few days after her strong comments on Medicare for All during her CNN town hall, Kamala Harris has backtracked at least a little bit. Now, this followed criticism from Republicans and billionaires. For example, Howard Schultz called Medicare for All system un-American. Then you also had Michael Bloomberg saying, oh, we can't afford it. It will bankrupt the nation, right? So, again, you also have corporate Democrats that are also coming out against or have been against Medicare for All, and they openly criticized her. So now, following that, one of her advisors on Tuesday said that while she still supports Medicare for All, she would be open as well to more moderate health reform plans. Now, according to CNN, these plans would preserve the health insurance industry and have been put forward by other congressional Democrats. Now, CNN says that it represents a compromise position that risks angering Medicare for All proponents. No kidding. Yeah, it kind of does. Now, but let's be fair. Let's be fair about this, right? Now, both the advisor and Harris's National Press Secretary, Ian Sams, said that her willingness to consider alternate routes to a single-payer system should not cast doubt on her commitment to the policy. Now, he says, Medicare for All is the plan that she believes will solve the problem and get all Americans covered, period. She has co-sponsored other pieces of legislation that she sees as a path to getting us there, but this is the plan that she's running on. Now, look, if she's running on that plan, then just run on that plan. I mean, again, any single-payer plan that preserves the health insurance industry technically isn't a single-payer by definition. So understand that, right? So what this is, well, now wait a minute, guys. I said that I believe in single-payer. However, I'm still open to you guys. I'm not radical. I mean, I'm saying that I believe in Medicare for All. I'm also throwing you guys a bone. Okay. Well, we'll see, right? Now, here's the thing. If you're not for the government to sponsor insurance, then you're not really for single payer. And that's all insurance. Full stop. But see, this is what we're saying. Now, I know I'm going to get a ton of heat for saying I don't trust Kamala Harris. Well, I don't. Well, I also don't trust completely Elizabeth Warren, even though I trust her more than I do Kamala Harris. I don't trust Cory Booker. I pretty much don't trust any politician, except for those who when you look at their policy positions and you look at their rhetoric and it matches up, well, then that makes me feel a lot better about trusting them on their word. For Kamala Harris, I don't know Kamala Harris. Nobody knows her unless you actually do know her personally. Then you can say, well, hold on, Jeff, you're wrong. Here's why X, Y, and Z. And I'll listen to this, right? But anyway, this is what we're saying. She's now saying that she is open for a compromise position that is not actually Medicare for All. So that is deeply problematic in my view, because what happened when we last had a compromise on healthcare? We got the ACA. The ACA was a Heritage Foundation plan known as Romney Care. So that's a big problem. Now, some of the other bills that she supported, to give you some details here, were proposed by Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz. Now, that bill would effectively create a public option, I think that's a bit 10 years too late. By allowing certain Americans to buy into Medicaid, there's a plan from Senator Jeff Merkley and Chris Murphy that would allow individuals to enroll in a new form of Medicare and employers to purchase it for their workforce. Again, another public type of option. Now, she was also co-sponsoring a bill called Medicare X from Senators Michael Bennet and Tim Kaine, which would again create a public insurance option on the Affordable Care Act exchanges along the side of private plans. Now, none of those plans will actually fix the problems that is wrong with our current healthcare system. The problems being, of course, rising premiums and people getting left out of the insurance system. Now, the reason that progressives are pushing so hard for Medicare for all is not just because it's some sort of slogan and everybody like, oh, Medicare for all sounds so great. No, it's because it is the only plan that is proven to bring down healthcare costs while covering every single American for less money. No substitution will do. None. This is why I don't trust Harris or anyone else in the establishment. You can't come out and say, I believe the solution, and this is a quote, and I actually feel very strongly about this, is that we need to have Medicare for all. That's just the bottom line. Well, great. I loved that statement. I gave her a lot of credit on Twitter. And I know there are a lot of people that were like, don't give her credit. She's going to fold. She's going to backtrack. And guess what? A couple of days later, she kind of backtracks. It's like a soft backtrack, right? And so, again, this is why progressives have a really, really difficult time trusting in the word of establishment politicians. Nonetheless, here's where she got a lot of her criticism. Again, the establishment, right? And of course, the donors. One of the establishment politicians is Dick Durbin. Now, Dick Durbin said, I don't want to guess what Harris is thinking, but that is a massive part of the American economy. There's a system in place for funding it. It would take a mighty transition to move from where we are to that. Now, if you're arguing that it's just going to be too hard and it's going to be too much to try to change our system, even though it's fundamentally broken as it is, it's just too hard. Well, that's not an argument that's going to win over a lot of people. So I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. And the whole point of this system is to have something that is truly transformative. At some point, we're going to have to do this anyway, because it is the only system that will actually work. We need fundamental change now because what we're doing isn't working. And I'm sorry, but people cannot wait. We cannot accept half measures. We need Medicare for all, and we need it now. So make it very, very clear to Ms. Harris or Mrs. Harris. We need Medicare for all. Do not backtrack from it. Commit or don't. And lose the progressive vote. Okay. We've got more. We're just starting on this one. So Kamala Harris is running for president on the Democratic side, and her past as a prosecutor is starting to come back to haunt her. Now, the most recent piece came from a video that has gone viral. Now, the video shows Harris talking about her truancy platform when she was the district attorney of San Francisco. I have that video. Let's take a look.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco. And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. So I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
Okay, so that's Kamala Harris being super giddy about the idea of throwing people in jail for truancy, for missing school. Now, look, I think all students should go to school. I think an education is super important, and so I get the reasoning behind it. But holy crap, you're going to throw people, people's parents in jail for kids missing school. I don't actually think that's the right way to go. Look, and here's the thing. Who does these truancy laws actually target? That's not the rich kid down the road, right? No, it's the poor kids. And again, I want people in school, but I don't want them arrested for not going to school. So, look, I think that the families who don't have the resources, or the ones who work 2 to 3 jobs, they're not home to make sure, their kids go to school, they shouldn't have to face jail time because their kid misses school. Okay? Now, of course, she's going to describe a situation where that actually happened, and as a good thing. Let's take a look.
We created what we call the DA mediation program, where we assigned prosecutors to go and sit with the administrators and principals when they met with all the parents. And frankly, the prosecutors in my office who volunteered to do this? My homicide prosecutors, my gang prosecutors. And they went over there, and I said, when you go over there, look really mean. And so they did, and invariably the parent said, well, who's the mean-looking dude? And the principal would say, well, that's someone that mean DA Kamala Harris sent over here, because she said she's going to start prosecuting you if we can't work this out. And through that initiative, we found cases like the case of the woman who was by herself, raising her 3 children, holding down 2 jobs, and homeless. She just needed some help. But by shining this infrared spotlight of public safety on the fact that her children aren't in school, we were able to figure that out, get her access to services that exist, and through that process, the attendance of her children improved. We dismissed the charges against her, and overall, we've improved attendance for this population in San Francisco by 20% over the last 2 years.
All right, so that story, right? I mean, we found a lady that needed some help, so we threatened to arrest her. Now, wait a minute. Whoa. Wait, you think that that's a good thing? Well, I mean, we gave her the stick, and later on we dropped the charges because she did get her kids to school. Well, again, you must be super proud of targeting marginalized people and threatening them with jail time. Again, you have to understand, right? So this is her background. So she's a cop. She is a cop. She's a prosecutor. So she has a background of enforcement, carrots and sticks, right? Or in basically her words, she's got a stick and she's going to use it. Now, I know some of you might agree and say, well, yeah, we have to get those kids in school. So yeah, if they don't, then we should be able to use the full prosecutorial power of the law. I disagree. Maybe there should actually be programs to help those single parents. And we should not have to have the threat of arrest to steer people into those programs. And look, again, we need better ways to combat poverty, homelessness, and other issues. You can't arrest poverty, right? And you shouldn't be able to arrest people for being poor, working 2 jobs, not having enough time to make sure that your kids end up going to school. Because when you're at work working that second job, you don't know. Your kid could say, "Bye, Mom, I'm going to school," and then just come right back home. Who's going to be there? No, you have to have better programs in place. You cannot fix this while involving law enforcement. And she said that she believed a critical way to keep kids out of jail when they're older is to keep them in school when they're young. And again, I agree with the goal, but how you get there matters. And I think the way that she did it was wrong. Now, of course, the campaign reached out to HuffPost and said this: arrests and other interactions with the criminal justice system were minimal under this program, and that the initiative enforced schools to work more closely with parents of struggling children and support those parents too. Well, how about instead of having the "I will arrest you if your kid is truant," how about you look into the families and start offering those resources when you start noticing truancy, instead of doing the whole "let's threaten your family" thing. Because again, but she's not going to do that because what she understands is sticks. Again, she is a prosecutor. So now HuffPost also notes that while they say it was minimal, there were a total of several parents that were arrested for their kids' truancy. So there were people that did go to jail. Now, I got to ask, in that situation, did you really help the families? I mean, throwing people in jail, and especially poor people, because keep it real, that's who this mostly impacts. You're not going to see a rich kid's dad go to jail. How did that help the family? Again, these people have jobs. That racks up debt being in jail. You're not able to pay the bills. You're not able to do anything. Sometimes you're not even able to post your way out of jail. How did that help the family? It didn't. It puts people who are already in bad decision in a worse decision or a position. And I can't support that. There's no such thing as a progressive prosecutor. And so when it comes to this issue, I think a lot of people, myself included, see it as disqualifying. Okay. One more story here for you guys. Let's go to Davos. First, let me get the video already. It's funny. I just have to notice before I get into this story. As soon as I mention negative things about Kamala Harris, my dislikes went right up. Guys, you've got to be open to into their policy positions. The stuff that I'm telling you is not right-wing smears. This is stuff that's actually happened. And you can disagree with I guess you can agree with their policies, but at least you're getting the information. And that's all I want you to know, is I want you to know the information. So, yes, I know I'm saying bad things about Miss Kamala Harris, but there are bad things in her record. And so, let's take a look. And also, I am being corrected here. Larry Krasner. I forgot about him. I don't know why, because he's done such great work. But thank you for pointing that out. All right, now let's go to Davos. All right. So the Davos Economic Forum is basically a gathering point of some of the richest elites in the world. Now they get together to talk about how they basically have more money than you and think they're smarter than you, and come up with philanthropic policies and things like that to try to help widening inequality. But there's one thing that seems to be missing in a lot of their conversations, and there was an attendee, one who was on a panel, who noticed and decided he was going to say something. Now that man is Rutger Bregman. Bregman. Rutger Bregman. Now, he is a Dutch historian and author of a book, Utopia for Realists. Now, he was on a panel last week called The Cost of Inequality. And when he was on that panel, he had this to say about what was missing in the conversation.
I hear people talk in the language of participation and justice and equality and transparency. But then, I mean, almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance, right? And of the rich just not paying their fair share. I mean, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one's allowed to speak about water. I mean, 10 years ago, the World Economic Forum asked the question, what must industry do to prevent a broad social backlash? The answer is very simple. Just stop talking about philanthropy and start talking about taxes. Taxes. We need to, I mean, just 2 days ago, there was a billionaire in here, what's his name, Michael Dell. And he asked the question like, name me one country where a top marginal tax rate of 70% has actually worked. And, you know, I'm a historian. The United States, that's where it has actually worked. In the 1950s, during Republican President Eisenhower, you know, the war veteran, the top marginal tax rate in the US was 91% for people like Michael Dell. You know, the top estate tax for people like Michael Dell was more than 70%. I mean, this is not rocket science. I mean, we can talk for a very long time about all these stupid philanthropy schemes. We can invite Bono once more, but come on, we got to be talking about taxes. Yikes. That's it, taxes, taxes, taxes. All the rest is bullshit, in my opinion.
Oh, damn, I love that. So, no, he's absolutely right. We've got to talk about taxes. And I love how there's people, for example, Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz is like, we can't do a 70% marginal tax rate. That's insane. It's un-American. It's never happened. And then as he pointed out, the billionaire on the panel asked, well, look, when have we ever done this? It's funny, all these billionaires have no idea the history of the United States. How we did actually have super progressive, super high tax rates, marginal of course, on the wealthy. And that, no, it didn't take all of their income. Yes, it led to investment, and it happened during one of the most prosperous times in U.S. history. They ignore that because what they've done is that they've internalized Republican propaganda. So that, of course, propaganda is, no, you must lower taxes on rich people because that creates jobs, and it will trickle down on you. Well, we've been doing that since Ronald Reagan, and there's been something trickling down, but it ain't wealth. Now, again, the Davos elite, when they did talk about taxes, they dismissed it, right? Ocasio-Cortez, for example, dismissed her, called her un-American, as well as calling other progressive policy initiatives like Medicare for all, just unrealistic, right? So here's the thing. The pitchforks are coming. And look, you've got a guy literally telling you. You have a lot of people literally telling you. Even rich people, like, for example, Nick Hanauer, right? They're saying, we've got to tax the rich. We've got to start having a conversation about reducing the levels of income and equality, right? We've got to reduce it. You can't eliminate it, but you can reduce it so that you don't have CEOs making 300 to 400 times more than their workers who are still making barely minimum wage and definitely not a living wage. You've got to have that conversation. You've got to talk about taxing the rich. And again, he's not the only one. There was somebody else on that panel by the name of Winnie Byanyima, right? Now, she's the executive director of Oxfam International. And she said this, quote, "We have a tax system that leaks so much that allows $170 billion of money every year to be taken to tax havens and to be denied the developing countries that need the money most. So we have to look at the business model, and we have to look at the role of governments to tax and plow back money into people's lives. And right now, what we have is policy that concentrates that wealth right at the top." I mean, you can look at the Trump tax cuts as a great example of what not to do, right? We have, since the Trump tax cuts, and there's been a recent report, basically we've largely failed to increase wages, hiring, and economic growth beyond what we had experienced prior to the tax cuts. It literally had no impact other than to give rich people tons and tons and tons of money. And of course, what have they used that money on? Not reinvestment, not wages, some bonuses scattered here and there that were very small percentages of what they actually saved in taxes. And mostly they have funneled that money into stock buybacks, which is directly linked with executive compensation. So congratulations, they have given themselves more money. Yay. Yay for them, right? look, tax cuts for the rich, I don't know how many times I have to say it, do not equal economic growth. We've got to institute fair taxation on the wealthy, and yes, do policies that encourage redistribution, redistributive policy that actually takes that money and gives it back and is used to help society. Things like education, single-payer healthcare, and infrastructure. And look, the pitchforks, if we don't do that, they are coming, and it's not a threat, right? It's not a threat. You can just go and look at the history. I know you billionaires, you're not great at history, as obviously you don't understand or you don't know that in the past, in America, we had tax rates of up to 92% under Republican presidents. And everything went incredibly well for the economy. But we've also had times where the pitchforks did come out. And I'm trying to prevent that. I'm trying to stop that from happening. And there's going to be a time here in America, again, where there will be no more wealth that can be extracted from the people at the bottom. When that happens, look, you don't have to be a historian to realize what happens when poor people have been pushed to the brink. The results don't turn out so well. So let's do something about this. Let's do fair taxation and redistributive policies so that we can all be prosperous, so that our money can work for us, so that our government can work for us, for all of us. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Go subscribe, like our clips. We're going to check to see if we have any new members. That one member that asked me a question earlier, why he's not getting the badge. It's because I don't see your membership here. So maybe it didn't update. I don't know when you signed up, but check to see if it actually went through. Because again, I don't see you on here. But for those of you who want to become members, hit the join button. I appreciate that. That goes to help the show. We still have a fundraiser going on for the camera. GoFundMe.com/TYTNationCamera. So we're still trying to raise money for that. And Patreon, of course. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. TYT Main Show is next. We'll see you tomorrow.